Thank you so much for choosing this session. This is called Building Family Literacy through Bilingual Storytime Partnerships. I'm Bonnie McEwen with the State Library, and let me tell you a little bit about the background behind the program and our speakers for this session. For many years, Waterloo Public Library has had a world language collection for youth, teens, and adults, but not a great deal of programming connected that collection with the community. That is until about 2011, when Hawkeye Community College and the Adult Learning Center opened a new facility near the Waterloo Library. And along with that came a valuable partnership between the two, when some of the library's collection was housed at the Adult Learning Center, which in turn led to bilingual story times. So here to tell us about this partnership is Kim Mashuk with Waterloo Public Library. Kim is the technical services librarian there, and fun fact, also an alumni of the State Library. And I miss the times when we would pal around together. And Kim is joined by Lindsay Lessman, Parent Education Specialist with the Hawkeye Community College. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and the time is yours.
Thank you for allowing us to have you here. We're thankful for being able to share our project opportunity and our collaboration that we've been working together. And we're hoping that this project gives you guys some ideas how to incorporate them into whether your library is small, medium, large, and how you can find some partnerships in your community, whether it's at the community college or with organizations that promote bilingual education. So we're gonna get started with Lindsay and giving some background about her position and what Hawkeye Community College Adult Learning Center does.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you everybody for having us here today. As Bonnie said, I'm Lindsay Leisman, and I am with the Hawkeye Community College Van G. Miller Adult Learning Center, which I will call the ALC today as I'm talking through the presentation. And the Adult Learning Center is an adult education and literacy program provider in the city of Waterloo. We are located in Black Hawk County, in Iowa, and our programs are very low or no cost, and they include English language and high school completion classes, IBEST classes, and the family literacy program, which is the program where I work. And you can see here on our map that we're located near the city center. We're along 2 bus lines, and we're about just 3 city blocks from Waterloo Public Library. And we moved to this location somewhat recently, just in January of 2019. And that was after more than 20 years, just a few blocks from here, but across the highway, which was still in an urban setting, but we're now a lot closer to downtown and much more accessible to the public library, which is pretty great for our purposes working together. And just to give you a glimpse of our student body for a full program year, and I will not sift through all of the information on this slide for you. But if you would like to take a closer look afterward, you'd be welcome to. Because of the pandemic that broke out in March last year, everyone needed to really abruptly move to distance learning, of course, and that impacted our student retention pretty dramatically. But before that happened, this was our last full program year, and we had enrolled about 791 ELL students for the program and 514 high school completion students, which are really typical enrollment numbers in our programs before the pandemic. These 2 programs qualify anyone with children to then go ahead and enter the family literacy program where I am, as long as people have children from, pregnancy up to 18 years old at home. And you can see here that many, many different languages are represented in our programs. We have high numbers of people who speak French, Spanish, and many different ethnic languages of our students. So for example, somebody might speak French from the Democratic Republic of the Congo or the DRC. And then they would also often speak Lingala, Shiluba, Swahili, many ethnic languages. And that's really the case for most of our students. So we just have many different languages at our building, which makes sense why we would want to promote the use of the World Languages collection over at the library. And in Black Hawk County, Iowa, you can see it's here in the light green square, and you can see that Waterloo Cedar Falls metro area takes up a really significant portion of our county. There are a little over 131,000 residents in Black Hawk County, just to give you an idea of the size of the area that our organizations serve. And we're really proud to have a large community of immigrants and refugees, including folks, like I said, from Democratic Republic of the Congo, Burma, many Latinx folks, which are our main groups of newcomers, but there are many more from all over the world who live in our county. And they all speak, like I said, a wide variety of languages, but we do mainly see French, Spanish, and then languages from Burma. So these very rich cultural language backgrounds that come along with our newcomers also include some economic power, which is really appealing to our local industries and something that our local industries are relying on to fill many different career positions across different fields in our area. And these industries are grateful for the potential to fill these skilled positions. And so I would say that these are people who are here to stay. They're getting settled. And so in order to create opportunities to learn from one another, we have to create those opportunities, right? We have to facilitate them. And it would be easy for people to become really isolated in a new community if doors are not opened. People are learning to navigate a new country and city, especially when the services and the government might look really different to somebody's home country, and everything is done in another language. So that becomes extremely difficult for the newcomer to generate connections if there aren't really big, obvious welcome signs, basically, on events and opportunities that are clear for new families. And then also in places where they can find them. So the Adult Learning Center, a place where people are looking for English language classes, high school completion classes, skilled trade training programs, is a really great partnership for the public library so that we can connect people to the wider community. And so that's where our work with the public library makes a lot of sense. And just a really quick view of a few events inside of the ALC, you can kind of see a lot of our different events here. Adult Learning Center students often already hold degrees in higher education from their first countries, especially from the DRC, especially from Democratic Republic of Congo. And they are drawing on these skills, and they have many skills that are rooted in their own culture and world experience, and all of that really helps them to be successful in establishing lives and careers here in Waterloo. ELL students do find a lot of community in their classes. They're learning about United States cultural norms and laws. They're tapping into a support network with our wraparound services that we offer at the building. And those all work to help decrease barriers to an education and career pathways. So you can see a few examples of what I mean by that here with work skills seminars, college application staff, community resource sessions. So all of this is really helping to orient people, to kind of help them understand the context of life here now. And it's really cool to see that and work with people on these different pieces of life, which I have a small part in, but mainly I am over in the family literacy program, which I have pictured here. We work on early language and literacy teaching strategies that build mainly English reading skills for both parents and their children, and that's in a 2-generation approach. Family literacy is what I would call a cultural connector, and I've heard this phrase used in other conference settings and research work. And cultural connector kind of makes that space where parents can access the basic education services, but then also receive support, like I had said before, with barriers to their education and career pathways. So I get to know students through conversations. I give confidential surveys to all of the families that I see, and that way I can match the needs that they identify that they need with the services that we are able to supply them with. So I'll refer them to our career pathway specialist, and then those referrals and resource information can get out to people for things like short-term utilities, you name it, rent, medical insurance billing, so on, all the stuff that families need to be successful, help their children. And then we also work on the work skills workshops as a part of the program. And so as people get situated, they're getting more comfortable, and then we see people start to help people who are arriving more recently as well. So we're building community in this way, getting people connected. And all of this is, you can see our group here, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, we've had to be a little bit more creative. It's meant making a lot of changes to the way our programming is done, but I can happily say that we've had more success than we anticipated. We've adapted with a new website. Lots of increased digital skills learning is going on throughout our building to help people navigate the digital side a lot more fluently. And then we discuss things that are on the website in our parent meetings. I have curbside book pickup, so I'm bundling up books. People stop by, pick that up for their families, and then we're learning online together. And then those who are in person are meeting with me just one-on-one or just a couple of people at a time so that we can keep things safe. And so far this fall, which started August and went to December of 2020, we had 92 students participate in parent meetings in this way, and that reached 223 children with 975 books. In a typical semester, I would, just for comparison, I would give out around 1,200. So a little down, but like I said, better than we had anticipated. So that is family literacy. And now that you have a little background, I will hand it over to Kim so she can explain how we been working together.
So one of my colleagues and I reached out to Lindsay in about October of 2019 to ask about her staff how they'd be interested in hosting the International Game Week. My coworker, India Johnson, does programming, and so she thought, hey, maybe we should do International Game Week at the Hawkeye Learning Center just down the road. And so they had ELL students and they had WPL staff, and then also the adult learning literacy coordinator instructors there at the program. Spent over a couple days over in November just playing games, Jenga, Connect 4, learning skills together and bonding over things. So it was a really positive experience. And so we thought, well, how can we take this positive experience and even grow it more and use the resources which we have in the library? And so what I did is talk to Lindsay, and we thought, hey, let's practice their English language skills, but also introduce the children within those families to the native speaking languages that their parents have, so they can understand both languages within the home environment instead of just one. So we thought, hey, potential to do more. Go to the next slide, Lindsay. So what we're doing is we're collaborating to provide a print-rich home environment. So heritage languages of preservation is critical for these families. It's because it's how their stories are told to each other, how things are passed down, especially in the Hispanic community, is where we are seeing lower literacy skills because it is a predominantly a language that is talked and shared via spoken word. And so books aren't used in the home as much. And so we kind of tried to focus on how can we incorporate the library materials that we have on hand and give them out to the families that are in Lindsay's program. So we realized that the library might not only be a welcoming place for them to come and use resources, but it could also be a barrier because we don't have librarians and staff members that speak all of their languages. Most of our things is predominantly in English, where we do have a little bit of Spanish and staff members who do speak other languages, but it's not fully bilingual immersement. And so we're like, well, how can we branch out? How can we do an outreach and reduce the barriers that the library may present? And so we decided, hey, let's open the doors and migrate part of our collection that we have in the world languages to where the people are. And that would be at Lindsay's place and at the Adult Learning Center there at Hawkeye. So in that fall of 2019, I went upstairs and I pulled a bunch of Spanish books that we had, Bosnian books we had, and any other language that we had in board books, picture books, and trucked a little, I think it was probably about 3 basketfuls of books over to Lindsay, and they were all cataloged and everything. And we brought them over. So you can go to the next slide, Lindsay. So we focused on this family literacy takes a 2-generational approach. So if we move the collection or part of the collection over to Hawkeye, and she focuses on the adult education with her colleagues there, and then we look at the early childhood and K-12 education, which we can fulfill part of the needs there. Then we can also educate the parents in order to help those students within the school system, because a lot of times we are finding out that the parents don't know how to use Zoom, don't need to know how to use Google Meet, have barriers within the school system in order to help their children. So how can we educate the parents within this? And the pandemic, of course, brought this out more. So how can we educate the parents to be successful partners in their child's learning at home? And so we then grew into the interactive literacy activities. So we're like, oh, story time. We can do a story time at the Waterloo Public Library on a day that the Adult Learning Center doesn't have classes and that families would be able to attend. So we're kind of doing a 2-setting approach. So breaking down the barriers by putting the materials there, and then also having them come into the library to get familiar with it. So.
And I would add there too, family literacy programming traditionally includes those 4 components that Kim is talking about here on this slide. And as she said, we're able to do 1, 2, and 3 over at the Adult Learning Center. And I was really missing that space for kids to be able to be involved, and that time for parents to apply what they're learning in programming with their children. And so to be able to find that space at the public library and collaborate with Kim and her colleagues over there is, to me, the ability to fully provide that quality, all-encompassing model of family literacy. I'm doing that as well as I can here, but I know that there's room for that potential. And so this really has opened up my ability to fully serve our families. And so it's really, you know, it's great to connect the library, but we've both really benefited from the idea.
It's a very mutual beneficial partnership.
Yeah.
So the collection, what do we have? Well, the WPL languages collection is on our second floor. It's a combined collection of youth, teen, and adult materials, about 2,500 items the last time I counted. So we have ESL materials, and then we focus on the most popular languages that Lindsay's slide showed that people in Black Hawk County speak. So we have Bosnian, Burmese, Chinese, French, Haitian Creole, Karenni, and then Spanish languages in the collection. We also have the ESL material and the materials for people to learn languages, in addition to promoting the transparent languages database that we have from the state library there. And then we do it in multiple formats as well. So we have audiobooks, books, CDs, DVDs, magazines, and playways. So we actually have a really small collection of world languages DVDs, mostly in Spanish and some French, and then also world languages CDs in Spanish and other languages as well. And it's really unknown, but we're hoping to promote it a little bit more. But it does bring some of our Spanish speakers in, since we do have those materials. And then we also focus our book purchasing on bilingual first. So we look for books that can be purchased that have the dual language, so both English and Spanish or French or Burmese, so they can have both experiences within that same book rather than the one language. So what do we have at the satellite collection? This is actually a picture of the satellite collection over at Lindsay's Family Literacy Program classroom. It's a small collection, about 75 items, again, in those variety of languages that I talked about earlier. There are some duplicate titles that are both at our library and over at Lindsay's. For example, the Mo Willems, Piggy and Elephant. They are really easy readers that I found in native languages that are both Spanish, French, that can be conversed over. And so we have them in both places. Dr. Seuss, of course. Some of the more popular ones, which publishers will print in multiple languages, but it's also a little hard to find the more unique ones with Karenni and Burmese and Bosnian. So we have a little bit of trouble ordering those, but we do get them in. So what we have done is purchase materials, those dual bilingual readers, and then we focus on purchasing from native speakers, so those who are native to that language, and also represent the BIPOC, so the Black, Indigenous, people of color. For example, it is, I found out with French books, especially when you go to Amazon or any French collection site, you will see most of the books are pictured towards what a typical French person would look like, the white French colonial person that lives in France, and not necessarily the French person who may live in the Congo or in one of the other African countries along the coast there. And so I try to focus on finding books that do focus on those people of color, or I tend to lean towards animal books because animals can typically be non-offensive, except for I do make sure that I culturally look at animals that may be offensive to one or another culture. So I try to work on that. And then during the pandemic, I decided to use part of my budget money and purchased e-materials in Spanish and French from Overdrive. And then we have Hoopla, and I have been focusing on the Hoopla collections that they have in a variety of languages as well. So Spanish and French and Chinese there as well. So we're promoting more of the e-resources. So next slide, Lindsay. So the library cards and bilingual stories. So we have a satellite collection over at Lindsay's place. How does it check out? We are on a Circe Dynex library, and we have allowed Lindsay the ability, and also Hawkeye Community College, their main campus. Both of them have our mobile circ capabilities in the classroom there. So they have a barcode scanner. They have the ability to issue new cards. They can check out materials, and the cards are able to be used at both the satellite center and at the main library. So we don't have that barrier there where they have to have 2 cards. And then we also did the card applications in multiple languages. So Lindsay took the application and she asked some of her senior students in the program to take it and convert it into the native language. So we have both a Spanish one, I think a French one, and we're working on a Burmese one, which is a little bit more complicated to be able to figure out in a typed program, but we will eventually get there. So we thought about, okay, we have the books there, what's next? So in January of 2020, pre-COVID, we started talking with the Lori Peterson, our youth department manager, myself, and Nick Rossman, our director, about how we could do the family story time at the library and incorporate the resources and have families there teaching each other the materials. So we decided to hold them in 2 of the languages that we had staff members that could speak, French and Spanish. So we had the staff members come and read a book that introduced the focus topics. So I think our first book was Hop on Pop, I think. And so we focused on family pronouns. And so we had the families talk to their kids about the pronouns that they could use within their family environment. And then that was our French one. So the families practiced the self-led languages with their children through songs, books, and crafts. And then we also gave them a library tour. So we took them through the youth department and showed them books that would maybe match their children's reading level. And then also took them up to the 2nd floor so they could check out books that they could read to their children in the native language, or that their children could learn how to read in the native language. And then we did a Spanish one as well. And the Spanish one focused on, I think we did Go Dog Go. And then we focused also on the pronouns of the family in that one as well. And so that one, the families were able to take a set of flashcards home with them with the pronouns of mom and dad, grandma and grandpa on front and back. So they could flip it over as a flashcard and learn the language of those pronouns. And again, we gave them a library tour. The other outreach that we've done with them is we've demonstrated the online resources such as Overdrive, Hoopla. I forgot to put transparent languages in here, and also BrainFuse to the adult education staff there. BrainFuse, we found out, has a great amount of resources for bilingual learners, especially in the computer help, learning the languages, citizenship, and testing resources. And so we've promoted BrainFuse a lot to those students, and then also Overdrive and Hoopla with those combined collections. And then during this initial period, we had Lindsay checked out about 38 library cards, and about 75 items of those circulated. So a lot of future potential, which Lindsay will speak about.
Yeah, with everything that Kim has described, we really feel like we've just gotten started and that we do have so much more that we can do together. So you can see professional development, like Kim mentioned, we've started introducing some of this to our AEL staff over here at the Adult Learning Center, but we know that there's a lot of work to do with familiarizing our staff so that they are able to teach about library services and resources in the classrooms, which would reach more than just parents, because we've got everybody who would access English and high school completion classes in our building. And so I think that would really broaden the audience as well. Would be a good strength. And otherwise, like I mentioned, interactive literacy activities. I think it's important to note that, we're very much in the piloting phase of introducing families to the library, getting families involved in the events that we're putting together. And eventually the goal is that families are getting more comfortable, taking more ownership, and we're really creating leadership activities so that it's not us telling families what to teach their kids and learn, but that we can, demonstrate these research-based language development stages, literacy development strategies, and language development strategies. Parents are taking that knowledge and speaking their own language as experts in their own language and culture, and then working with us. We've got resources, ideas. They have ideas, knowledge. We can put that together and support and facilitate those opportunities for families to take that leadership role. And then the hope is that we have regular story time and interactive literacy activity events that are led by the families who are being served. Parents could be reading books in their own languages, and then ultimately, once everyone's comfortable with this model, and we've got the agreement, the buy-in of our families who we're working with, that we could invite, and advertise to the general community that this is happening. And I think the hope there is of course then that everyone's coming together. We've got, our mainstream families here in Waterloo who would love to give their children access to authentic French speaking and Spanish and other world languages, and that they would be happy to come in with their children, and everybody's learning together, working together, learning from each other, and appreciating each other's strengths and knowledge. And we're hoping that this would be just such a wonderful way to build community in a really relaxed and enjoyable way, and as an extension of the K-12 setting as well. So that's really our hope with the future of this collaboration. So we'd like to turn it over to you. We've got a couple of reflection and discussion prompts here. Feel free to go ahead and start asking your questions, but also connecting what we've talked about here with your work. I would invite you to reflect on what you're doing, and whether you're in a smaller setting or larger than ours. Do you see how some of these ideas might fit, or are you already working on some things like this, and how is that going for you, and can you share that with everyone here today? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay and Kim both. I do see some questions that have come while you were speaking, and one asks, this is probably a question for Kim, does your language collection circulate through Silo?
Yes, our language collection is in Silo. We upload it every month. We have it in there. Lindsay's does not. Lindsay's is coded just for those who are in her place, but we do have our collection within Silo, and I'll make sure that next month we make sure that it is included in that Silo. But we had during the pandemic, one of the my schools go to a school. My children go to a school in which Spanish is taught there, and so the Spanish teacher asked me to pull some books from our collection that she would be able to do read along story times too. And we are also seeing more circulation in that collection due to the Waterloo schools having Spanish immersion and French immersion classes within the district there. And so we have teachers who are pulling books from that collection to have students read in the classroom, because we do teacher book sets.
Very good. And there's another question I noted a little bit ago about the budget for this. Do both of your agencies, I imagine Waterloo, yes, but I'm not sure, Lindsay, about your agency. Do both of your agencies have money, budget money earmarked for the purchase of these collections?
Waterloo Public has, I have about close to 1,500 to 2,000 for spending materials. And so I work really hard to find the cheapest price in the materials, the best materials, and for the collection. And so that's a little bit hard. But Lindsay also has different funding opportunities than I do.
Yeah, and in the family literacy program, because we're giving books away to families to keep for free, it's a little bit different, and it's nice for that reason that we have the lending library as one example of how people can access books, and then we're also able to help build people's personal libraries through sending home books through family literacy program. And the program budget per year is really contingent upon how funding is going in any given program year. We are fully grant and gift funded. Only 10% of the program overall is funded by state AEL funds. And so it fluctuates what I have available to spend on materials here. Kim and I have discussed grant, joint grant applications, and we have yet to identify one that will work for us, but we're hopeful that would be something in the future we could do as well.
Yes, because we're looking at grants for both materials and for technology. We're finding that our ELL, or those that are in the family literacy program, do not have access to high-speed internet or internet at all if it's not through their phone provider, and they're also low income, so they're using the phones that they receive from the SNAP program, and so they don't have a lot of data on those devices. And so we're looking at ways that we can partner together to check out those materials, and then also organizations within the Cedar Valley that would be able to help us navigate that as well, and teaching technology skills, and also technology skills like digital literacy skills, but also those foundational reading literacy skills.
Marcia has asked about their community with families from Costa Rica, and if you would have any ideas or suggestions for involving those families more, making them feel more welcome at the library, maybe resources that they could provide.
To that, I would ask a couple of questions first before making a recommendation. Marcia, in your community, are there English classes? Are there ways of speaking with the Costa Rican community there to find out what kinds of needs they feel that they have and how you might provide those services? I find that the best engagement happens when we understand what our community is asking for, and then we can provide it. And that's sort of that community connector idea too.
My suggestion would also be similar to Lindsay's, coming from a person who has done international relations in a previous life, is going where they're at first and immersing yourself into their population, and looking at what their needs may be just as an observer, and then talking, because especially the Hispanic or those from the Spanish native countries there in Central America, they're very upscaled family, matriarchs, patriarchs, so those people who have the power. So you have to get to know who that person exactly is and speak to that person, and then they're able to disseminate verbally the information that you have. So immerse yourself first, and then find a partner within that community, and then they'll bring those people into you. You can't necessarily guarantee that if you start offering it, they will come. You have to find an insider within the community.
I think that's a good time to point out too that I have, I'll go to the next slide. I have included a few resources for you to take a look at afterward, and I would really recommend especially the pieces put out through the Pennsylvania State University Goodling Institute for Research and Family Literacy, which is a great big long description for just a treasure trove of information. There are practitioner guides and research briefs that are kind of more bite-sized, more digestible pieces of information that are just packed with information for offering programming to families of diverse backgrounds. So do take a look at those. I can't recommend those enough. And some other pieces here, and of course,
there was one in Library Journal just recently in September that talked about the one that's listed by Amy Rhea, Libraries Tackle Literacy from Youth to Adults. And that one talked about collaborations within urban libraries, especially down in, I think it was Arizona, and how they did one-on-one interviews with people there and gathered in the information, kind of doing the ethnography of seeing what's going on in the community and what is actually needed, because then they were able to tailor the needs to that particular family or to that particularly individual. Patty, the small group and show a movie in the Spanish mode, I'm guessing, yeah, you could show that movie in the Spanish mode as long as it fell under the licensing agreement that your library falls under, or you could get the movie in Spanish as well from another agencies, because sometimes the Spanish mode of a movie is not necessarily directly correlates with the actual Spanish that is being spoken in translation. So there is a loss in translation that happens there.
Well, we are very nearly at 12 noon, and that is our magic ending point for this session. I want to thank you both so much, Kim and Lindsay, for
Thank you.
Sharing your really important and inspiring partnership story. I think there's so much there that could so, so well be duplicated in other cities and towns, large and small, if the resources are there and if the opportunity and the resources are there. So I thank you both so much for joining us at ILOC 2021.